Well, hi, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
John Bear's good. Oh, okay. I recognize those voices.
How are you?
Very good. How are you, Carmenza?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. John, how are you?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you. Where are you, in the conference room?
I am, as a matter of fact. Yes. We actually have real people here today.
As opposed to fake people.
Virtual people. Well, at least the people in this room are real. Man. Quite time yet. So, John, how are gas prices out in the desert?
As I speed by the gas stations, they're approaching $6 for premium.
Is it?
Yeah. Tesla.
That's what John has. He has a Tesla. But Jay doesn't have an electric car, does he?
No, not yet. But,
Not yet.
Yeah.
What, 5:45 in Irvine right now?
Good deal.
Hmm.
Our guest speaker has arrived.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, I'm gonna check. You're early, 2 minutes early. Woo.
Yeah, you're 2 minutes early, right? Yes, you're ahead of the table. We're going to turn this in your direction.
Okay.
Is there anything that we need to share on the screen?
Just my face.
That's all we need. That's all we need.
No, we need it.
Mary's going to be very kind to us today. She's going to share her face. Hi, Sarah. Actually, at 10 o'clock, we're going to begin with Sarah Menchaca today.
Hey, Rich, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing good.
Hi, Sylvia. How are you?
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Sylvia, you have a turtleneck on. Is it cold there?
It's about 60 outside.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's
So-
not bad.
It's no different than here.
Right.
Notes, okay.
What's that?
You have your notes prepared?
I do.
All right, we have another minute before we begin.
There's a lot of cars out there today. I think all the medical offices are getting their deliveries and all the pregnant women are coming to get their checkups.
Well, it's common in the third floor here.
It is.
There's a fertility clinic in our building on the third floor.
My smartphone always tells me I'm going to the fertility.
It's
Actually quite funny.
That's funny.
Scary.
I'd be nervous if I were told that. Well, good morning, everybody. How are you today? So we have two speakers, and the first is Sarah Menchaca with Southern California Funding. I asked Sarah to give us an update in regards to the lending industry. And after that is Mary Gwak, and we're going to be talking about farming, because if you don't have listings, you're not probably closing transactions. It's very difficult, right? It's so competitive. And then at the very end, I just wanted to go over the fine schedule associated with the clear cooperation policy, or maybe I should say the lack of the clear cooperation policy. And it's ugly. So I want to save everybody money. And Sarah, if you would like to begin.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I do just want to give a quick market update. You know, everyone's always curious what the rates are doing. Always recommend that your clients get, you know, a custom rate quote for their specific scenario, but to give everyone a general idea on purchase transactions, if we're looking at a 75% loan to value for a high balance purchase, so this would be anything A loan up to 970,800. The rates today are between 3.99 to 4.5%, with 0 to 1 points being charged. On a conforming balance, so that would be up to 647,200. Rates are ranging between 3.75 to 4%, and again with 0 to 1 points being charged. A lot of what's showing an increase in interest rates is obviously what's going on with Ukraine and Russia, and what's to happen with our oil, natural gases, and then of course the Fed's planned interest rate hikes for the remainder of this year. One new thing that is coming out that may help you guys with your transactions is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac did announce that they will be accepting desktop appraisals. So this may help you guys when it comes to shortening your contingency periods. When you are working with your loan officers, they should be able to tell you if you guys will be able to have that desktop appraisal by running their file through the automated system. So basically what that means and how that's going to save time is instead of an appraiser, going out to the property, setting up that inspection and having some time delay there, a desktop appraisal, the appraisers actually can do it right from their desktop. So it does save a little bit time for your clients. When you will get that is usually on a purchase, a primary residence, and the loan to value being 90% or less.
Sarah, can
So
you,
it is someone who is really going to be reviewing the documentation. It's not just based on a formula. Is that fair to say, or do we not know yet?
So a desktop appraisal is not the same as an appraisal waiver where the value is being accepted by DU or LP. A desktop appraisal, they are going to be taking a look at what is available online. So, maybe what's on Zillow, if they have the MLS access, they're going to be generating the value based off of that information.
Is it a choice in terms of an automated appraisal or having somebody actually go out to the property?
Correct. So you can opt out. And I would say that if the property itself, is in great condition, there are high upgrades, I would advise probably not doing the desktop appraisal. If the property may be in less than perfect condition and, maybe there's something that don't need to be notated on the appraisal report, then a desktop appraisal might be the way to go.
Okay, good advice. That's kind of what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
hey, Sarah, can you just repeat, because my phone was ringing, what were the interest rates that are currently now?
Sure. So both are based on a 75% loan to value, obviously with excellent credit, but high balance, you're looking at a range of 3.99 to 4.5 with 0 to 1 points being charged. And then on a conforming loan, 3.75 to 4% with 0 to 1 points being charged.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any questions for Sarah? No, Sarah, thank you very much. I appreciate your help and time here.
I
So
have a
obviously,
question. Richard, I have a question.
Go ahead,
Is
Sylvia.
desktop appraisal less expensive than the regular?
It is less expensive. It'll probably range between $150 to $100 less than what you would pay for a typical appraisal.
Okay, thank you.
so
You're
not
welcome.
that much less than having somebody physically go out to the property.
Correct. The benefit would be mostly saving you time. I know sometimes, just so everyone's kind of familiar with the appraisal process, but I know this comes up a lot, is that, people want to know, can I waive my contingency? Can I shorten my appraisal contingency? Appraisal reports are something that the lenders don't really have that much control over. They are ordered and managed through an appraisal management company. So a loan officer can order the appraisal report as soon as the file has been disclosed. And then once that happens, then the order is placed with the appraisal management company. They turn around and they're going to give that order to the appraisers that they have available in their network. So sometimes, we can get that done, within a couple of days. It just kind of depends on the appraisal availability. If they're busy, if the property is located in an area that might be considered rural, or there's just not that many appraisers in that area, it can sometimes take a little bit longer to get an appraiser assigned. So in some cases, the desktop appraisal might be beneficial. In some cases, it might not be. But always work with your loan officer to kind of determine the best outcome for you guys.
Okay, and then I guess changing the subject a little bit, but depending
Mhm.
upon the complexity of the borrower, everybody's looking to shorten their loan contingency period. Can
Yes.
you give us some thoughts on that, Sarah?
I mean, I would think it really just kind of depends. If the borrower, has gone through that pre-approval process and they're, a W-2 employee, there's really not much that's gonna, come up. There's really no reason why anyone shouldn't be able to shorten their loan contingency. If someone's a self-employed borrower, there could be certain things that might come up in underwriting. Maybe the underwriter looks at it and they want some type of updated profit and loss statement, depending on your loan amount size. If you're looking at a jumbo loan, you might want to be a little bit more cautious in how you shorten that loan contingency. But really, it's not usually the loan that's the issue. A lot of times it can be the appraisal. If the value is less than $1 million and you're putting 80% or 20% down, more than likely you're going to get that appraisal waiver, and then you're not going to have that issue. What I've been experiencing is that some of my clients are kind of already pushed to their max. So if that appraisal comes in low, that might make the difference of them, wanting to move forward or not. So again, just having that communication, between the loan officer, the agent, and the buyer, it's kind of really important to kind of understand, how short you can make those contingencies where everyone's going to understand what the outcome is. So definitely, there's no issue usually with shortening them, 10 days or less. It just kind of depends. If you're looking at a condo, you want to keep in mind that, condos also need project approvals, and getting those documents from the HOA management companies, those can, take up some time. Sometimes, again, they come in 5 days. Sometimes, they take 10 to 12 days.
What about appraisal gaps and deciding how much to offer on an appraisal gap letter?
I mean, really, it's going to kind of come down to how much the buyer is willing to pay. Are you talking about if, you're negotiating the offer and, you're at $1 million, maybe the buyer can pay, $25,000 over the appraisal if it comes in less. I've seen offers written up that way, but really it's something that depends on the overall situation of the buyer.
Yeah, because out here we're seeing homes going anywhere from 100 to like 400,000 or 500,000 over list price, which we know probably won't appraise, and it's coming down to the appraisal gap, who gets the deal. And I'm in one right now, and my clients wrote for up to 50,000 on an appraisal gap because that's the extra cash that they would have. And I don't know what else to do to make us more competitive. I write escalation clauses, and so I'm under the impression that my offer is going to be the best out there, but unless I'm competing with the agent.
Right. And it's hard too, because you don't know what these other offers are. If the client's putting down, 50%, 60% down, that appraisal difference isn't actually going to make that much of a difference in their loan. So they'll still be able to move forward. So I know it's a struggle. But, anytime that you have a loan where the sales price is $1 million or less, I'm willing to run those files through the automated approval and see how much we can push that appraised value to see how much you guys can work with in order to waive that appraisal contingency. And that might also help with some offers. You'll know before you go into that offer if you're going to get that appraisal waiver.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Sarah? No, I guess not. Sarah, thank you very much. And obviously always make your contact information available for everybody, Sarah.
Sure, I'll put that in the chat right now. Thank you.
That's
Rich.
a good idea. I like it. All right, thanks again, Sarah. So next,
Thank you.
Mary Gwak with Lawyers Tile. Mary, it's your opportunity.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. for those of you at home offices and here with me today. Today we're going to be talking about just some of the things that I'm seeing as far as in the trenches. As you all know, most of the affiliates that you work with, whether it's someone like Sarah or myself, we're working with a very wide net of clients, clients at different places in their careers, as well as geographically. And I think it's a really good idea to just kind of, have these conversations with my agents. It's not to give away any trade secrets, but it is to just share with you some of the trends that we're seeing. One of the things that I discussed with Richard when we were discussing this meeting is there've been some dramatic changes since we've gotten into our new norm with COVID-19 in our industry. And I think one of the biggest changes that we are seeing is these sellers that we have traditionally thought of being most likely to sell sellers. They're not the same faces as they were 2-3 years ago. So I wanted to share some stats, if you will, so that you have an idea of who you should be targeting in marketing. First and foremost, most of us, especially in Orange County, we talk about turnover ratios and what segments of people are the most probable to sell. And we've traditionally looked at first original homeowners or people that have lived in their homes for 20 plus years. That's always been kind of a really hot point. And that's across Orange County. I know Irvine's a little unique because we've got so many new homes, but generally speaking, we would look to people who have lived there for a long time with a ton of equity. Well, that conversation's not as viable anymore because first and foremost, a lot of people have a ton of equity. It's not just the people that bought 20, 30 years ago. It's the people that bought 4 or 5 years ago or 8 or 10 years ago. So the two areas that we are seeing a lot of shifts, and this is what we are doing with some of our clients that are really, really heavily geographically farming, is we've had numbers set in place at the end of last year to prepare for this year's marketing. And based on what we've seen in the last 24 months, we've had to re-strategize and re-scrub. We've included in our data people that have lived in their homes for 4 to 5 years. Interestingly enough, the last 24 months has shown us that a lot of these sellers are actually short-term homeowners, meaning people that have lived for about 4 to 5 years because they have seen such an exorbitant amount of gain that they'll probably never see from, especially these days, their stock portfolio or their savings from, just saving and stocking away for 10 or 20 years. So the 4 to 5 year segment, I'm going to just give you a couple figures so that you can think about. Just 5 years ago, the sellers that owned for 4 to 5 years were about 8 to 10% of the sellers. They had owned for 4 to 5 years, and the 8%, 9% of the sellers would sell. Today, when we look at that same, group of sellers, or excuse me, the sellers who have sold in the last 24 months, 19% of the sellers have owned for 4 to 5 years. So the reason why I emphasize that is it's, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, right? Certain segments, everyone's going to go after. But I think that not as many people have shifted what they're doing and focusing on to this particular segment. And with COVID-19, a lot of our clients are saying that, people who had bought with XYZ intention, their intentions are completely different. They've had to redraw and remap their life for what they want. So that's a group that a lot of us may be ignoring or missing or not thinking about. The other segment that I think is very, very interesting is the 8 to 10 years. So a lot of times, the 8 to 10 year segment, people have always kind of thought, well, they're kind of just getting comfortable. It's more likely that they're going to do a little bit of renovation. They've paid down their home a little bit, but that segment actually has gone up to 23%. So in the last 24 months, 23% of our sellers have been owners of that property for 8 to 10 years. If we go back 5 years, it was not a bad number, but it was only about 15%. So in those two areas, there's a significant jump. And then of course we have the people that are what we call the long-term owners, right? The 16 to 20 years. Another interesting fact when we talk about these years of ownership is what we have traditionally thought of as original owners, and this may not apply as heavily to, again, to our newer parts of Irvine, but we're seeing less and less original owners sell. And I think partially it's because, you know, we have such an aging population throughout the country, but especially in Southern California. A lot of these homeowners are people that have owned their homes since the 60s and 70s and 80s. And they're basically the silent generation of people. They don't sell, they die and basically give their children the property. So what we've done is, again, going back to some of our clients that do really, really heavy marketing in multiple cities. We're not talking about a couple thousand pieces. We're talking about 15 to 50,000 pieces of mailers. They've gone in, actually extracted those folks. They've taken out people that have bought within the first 3 years of being built. So all of those types of numbers and strategies can easily be done by us at the title company. We can extrapolate based on those numbers. One of the things that I think we all need to keep in mind right now is, you know, we've always heard in this industry, listing is king, listing is king, listing is king. Yes, listing is king. Buyers are difficult, gas prices are high. It's all very understandable, but a really notable change or a shift that I'm seeing right now is some of the best top producing agents, their business has gone from being a 75 to 85% listing heavy agent to becoming almost 50-50. So my point on that is, as difficult as buyers are, if you don't incorporate them into your business, it's going to be very, very hard. In preparation of this meeting, some of them are my clients, some of them are clients that I do not work with, or agents that I do not work with, but that do anywhere from 25 to 200 transactions a year. And I've gone and looked at their business in the last 12 months versus say 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, these top producers represented about 75 to 85% of their business as listings only. And then it was just a few on the buy side. But now it's almost across the board. So when I look at the people that have had the best years in their career over the past few years, they've been people that have incorporated the buyers. The reason behind that, I think, is, and this is not something that I just, figured out on my own. This is from conversations with some clients that are regrouping and re-strategizing and figuring out, how do I survive and how do I get on top from this, all of the changes going on, is they're having to really, really be consultative with their clients. If you're not consulting with the clients, you can't go to an appointment simply with the idea and the conversation, I want to list your home, I can get you top dollar. Like, that's, everyone can say that right now. You don't need a skill right now to say, I can get you top dollar. Unfortunately, that's not to take away anything from our very seasoned agents and great negotiators, but that's the reality of the market. The agents that are going to win that listing are the agents that are going to be able to sell them that story of what are they going to do next? Why is the benefit here? So if you're not already, I think it is a great time right now to really, really make some solid relationships with referral markets. So across different companies, different phases of careers, I'm seeing a lot of agents make great strides with getting in touch with different agents within the Coldwell Banker network. You're at Coldwell Banker, which is a huge name. You've got the benefit of having this worldwide network. So why are we not connecting with agents in Canada? Why are we not connecting with agents in Boise, Idaho, in North Carolina? And starting simple conversations, but you're essentially able to get people, if you've got someone who is in their 50s and saying that they don't have any children, they're going to be retiring in 5 years and they want to move, but they can't afford anything here, the likelihood of them moving out of state is very, very high. So if you leave it to chance and let them figure that out and you say, Mr. Seller, once you get that all figured out, call me because I can get you top dollar. It's not going to work. It's just not going to work. So the people that are coming out winning right now, they essentially have an exit strategy. You know, not everyone's going to bite on it, but you've got to start having those conversations and stirring in their mind what the possibilities are. The other thing that a lot of people are concerned about, not only where am I going to go, where am I going to place my money, is the taxation. When we think about all the gains that people have had, like the capital gains right now, it is the most common conversation I think that my agents are having to have, because people are afraid to sell their house because they don't want to pay their taxes, which seems kind of a, you know, in some respects you think, well, yeah, but you didn't have that money in your bank account. But it's really hard to say, well, I've just made $700,000 on my home and I have to write Uncle Sam a $100,000 check. So one of the things that, if you're not having these conversations, brush up on those skills. I know you're not supposed to give tax advice, but imagine if you had a seller, instead of just living in that house till the end and getting $1-2 million in capital gains, maybe it's better that they move after $600,000-$800,000 in capital gains. Those numbers are so crazy right now. We never even thought we would have these conversations. But guys, we're having these conversations with people that own 3-bedroom condos right here in Irvine. I mean, there's places in Irvine where people have bought condos when their kid was in 4th grade, kids off to college now, and they made $700,000. And for those people, even though it was a primary residence, the thought of writing capital gains taxes on that additional $200,000-$300,000, they can't pull the trigger. So those conversations are not necessarily ones that's going to get you a listing immediately. And I think if there's anything out of this lesson, is it's the market is shifting to making you guys having to be consultants. If you're not a consultant, you're not going to be able to sell a home. Nobody wants to buy a product these days. They need to buy a story. They need to buy a relationship. And in order to do that, we need to know kind of what is available, what is in place for them. Proposition 19 is another really powerful tool for a lot of people, because 55, that's not very old. There's a lot of people as far as population goes that meet that segment. So if you're doing farming pieces and sending things out, something that I've talked about, I'm pretty sure I've talked about with you guys too in one of the meetings, but if there's a property that recently sold in a neighborhood, and instead of putting out just a simple, you know, a comp flyer like a lot of us do, we put out, these are what's sold in your community. Take a couple of those. Don't use the address because you don't want to offend anyone, but draw a picture, draw a scenario. One of my clients that got probably the biggest callback. So I have an agent, works North Orange County. She mails out close to 20,000 pieces. And we worked on one piece and she got over 75 phone calls. So what she did with that marketing piece, it's something that we had been talking about since last year, but she finally put it together. We basically took some of the market areas, was her own stuff that she sold. Others, she didn't have a listing in there that recently sold, but essentially she took a listing that closed, took that tax base of what that seller had. And again, she didn't put an address, but she basically said in 92620 in November, there was a home that closed at $800,000. The seller's tax base was $200,000. They moved to Lake Elsinore and bought a $700,000 dream home, 4 times the size of their home. And this is what their taxes look like. So she did this for every farm area and she got 75 phone calls. That she doesn't get that many phone calls in an entire quarter, but it's, you know, it was a thoughtful piece. So I've always said this, it's not, you know, it's about the consistency, but if you can really put something in there that makes people think, stop and think, like, okay, how does it apply to me? How can I benefit from this? Those are some of the types of things that will allow you to start having the conversations. And the people that are just going out and trying to get the home sold, trying to get the listing because they're going to get top dollar, that's everyone right now. I wanted to share a couple of other numbers with you so that you have kind of an idea. So as I mentioned, the two segments that we really want to focus on right now is people who have owned for 4 to 5 years and people who have owned for 8 to 10 years. And in that segment, in all of Orange County, that entails 16,000 homes that were purchased between, or excuse me, 65,000 homes that were purchased between 2006 to 2002. So 2002 to 2006, I should say it the other way around. There's 65,000 viable sellers within that pool. So that goes back to the 8 to 10 year segment. And then if we look at the 4 to 5 year segment, we have a total of about 40,000 homes. And that can definitely be, the filter would go into any city or any segment that you chose. So today it's not about, oh, let me pick a zip code and mail out to 1,500 homes or 2,000 homes. Today it's about pick a bigger area, put a couple of these filters in and extrapolate those and have meaningful conversations where people can really imagine, what am I going to do with that $400,000, capital gain that I've had, that I'm going to be able to sell this home, not pay any of the taxes because I fall within the $500,000 exemption, and I can essentially move and find a better, bigger home. Might not be in the same neighborhood, but it gives them an exit strategy. Do we have any questions?
So in your focus farm that you have on your app.
Yes.
So on that, now your focus farm, does it do 8 to 10 years? Or
They have not yet.
they have not?
I imagine that they will soon.
Okay.
So these numbers that I came up with, they were done. I was forced to kind of rehash some numbers in Orange County.
Okay.
And after having various conversations with people, that's kind of what it came out to. But I think most of these next to sell types of applications and services and data apps that a lot of people in the industry use, they haven't caught up to that 4 to 5 year segment yet, or the 8 to 10 year segment. Now, a lot of like what Shweta was just asking about is one of our farming tools called Dynamic Farms, and they have something called Focus Farm. I'm sure a lot of those segment people will be in there because Focus Farm just extrapolates the types of sellers that were selling in the last 24 months. So a lot of those would have been kind of the same segment. If you're not already doing it, the other thing that you really, really want to focus on is go back, especially our veteran agents who have been in the industry for more than 4 or 5 years. You need to go back to those buyers that you've put in homes and really start having conversations. A lot of us are neglecting to stay in touch with our previous buyers. Those are your next sellers. That's kind of my point, is your buyers or your sellers. Don't think of them as, I just want a seller to list their home. If you help someone find another home, they're going to be able to give you that listing. And we're seeing that more and more. Just as I was mentioning to you, a lot of my agents that have had some of their best years in their career, that their business is now made up of 50% buyers and 50% sellers. I also went through my list and looked at kind of the top 250 agents in Orange County 2 years ago versus last year. So 2 years ago, and then what took place in 2021. And there's a handful of people that really fell off that list. They went from being like the top 5 to being down to the top 50. And it was interesting. This isn't, I wasn't looking for the information, but I was going through the list and I thought, where's so-and-so, where's so-and-so? Why are they not on my top 250? And what I noticed was most of the people that have dropped out of their top 10 seat are people that have not worked with buyers. it was fascinating. And some of them are people that are here right in Irvine that are big, big names, but they went from having 50, 60 transactions. And then they, like last year, they did 21 transactions. So their competitors started working with their buyers and then listed their homes. And we're seeing that more and more. It's been a very, very difficult market, in my opinion, for the mid-level agent. And I think it's because we haven't been able to better allocate our time and figure out how to try to work with a few more buyers. I'm not saying it's easy, guys. That's not my point. I'm not saying, why aren't you working with buyers? It's so easy. But I'm saying that's kind of the hidden gem. As much as we dread it, those are our people that potentially will be able to sell where we're going to be able to sell their homes. Any questions?
No, but I did want to point out that the tax ramifications or the tax benefit, because could we, for example, focus on people that have owned their properties for 2 years or more, owner occupied, and whether they're single or it's a couple or jointly owned. And with that, so let's assume we look for potential candidates that have owned their property for more than 2 years. So it's their primary residence. They're eligible for the $500,000 exemption. It seems to me the proposition would be, look, if your house has $1 million gain for this single property, you're going to be paying tax on $500,000. So at minimum, $125,000. But if you move, take advantage of that $500,000 exemption, move into a replacement property, you've got another $500,000 exemption. You're not paying $125,000 in tax. You're avoiding all taxation. So that's information we can define actually based upon
Absolutely.
married status or joint status or individual.
Correct.
Because then we can make a determination what they're eligible to take advantage of.
Right. I don't know if you guys all understand what Rich is saying, but these are the types of things that I'm saying. No.
I have people laughing at me in here. Like Carlos in my ear.
Did that come off weird? What I was trying to say is Richard has an excellent point. It is this type of information that we're lacking to put out into our marketplace. It's not enough to say, I can get you top dollar. See you later, sign my listing. It's just not enough.
Yeah.
You need to give people a way and an idea of how it can be done. One of the most common things that I hear from people is, well, they know all that stuff. No, they don't. Trust me, they don't know all that stuff. The most intelligent of people, I mean, certain segments in the Orange County marketplace, we've got very well-educated, very affluent people, but it's not something that they do all the time. So it's too much for them to sit down and pencil it out. But if you can extrapolate a farm package based on some of the criteria that Richard's talking about, so they've owned for 2 or more years, we figure out the people that have joint tenancy, preferably husband and wife. And then from there, you're marketing to them with this idea, a concept that can essentially help them save thousands of dollars and upgrade to a new home or downgrade to a new home, right? And those types of conversations are not conversations that most agents are having. The ones that are having them are the ones that are winning in the market right now. I mean, just the simple, even the door knockers, I've got a lot of agents that do weekly door knocking sessions. And if people are just going out with a cute bag of, candy or whatever it is, versus someone who's going out with, do you know that this Proposition 19 will allow you to move to that next home and save X, Y, and Z on your taxes? Or do you know that capital gains exemption is only $250,000? Do you know that you are possibly subject to probate because you hold title by yourself? I mean, those are the types of conversations that we ought to be having to, really be a consultant and a lifelong agent, I think, for the consumers. They're not looking for anyone transactional anymore. They're really looking for someone that can help them build their nest egg, help them with their entire real estate portfolio. And if the better that we can get at doing that, the better that I think your business, the longevity and the ability for you guys to have trickle in business over the years is going to be having those types of conversations.
So it sounds like you're saying that it's not enough to be a real estate agent anymore. You have to be actually an actual real estate professional.
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Can I share a story with you guys? I just had something take place a couple of days ago. You know, I get myself into all sorts of odd situations. I don't know, why or how. I love it, but sometimes I have to chuckle at myself. I met a gentleman at a networking event several years ago. He's a financial planner, and every now and then he'll call me and ask me for copies of deeds on a property because he's working with an elderly client and he manages their money and he wants to see how their title is vested. So he had me check on a property, and I checked the property. It's in Tustin, original owner, same family owned it since 1976. It was owned by two couples. So it was father and mother, and then the son and his wife. They bought in 1976. Everybody has died except one person. There's a real estate agent who is a big farming agent. He had been talking to the son, not the alive father, but the son who's just in about his 60s or so, talking to the son for a good 8-9 months, just when am I going to get the listing? When am I going to get the listing? When am I going to get the listing? And he knew that his father was not in the greatest of health. Not once did he check title for this gentleman. Not once did he deliver a property profile. Not once did he say, hey, do you know that your father owns this property and he's the only person alive now, as you've mentioned, and he doesn't have it in a trust. It's just him. Long story short, with the assistance of the stockbroker and myself, we were able to get a notary to Hoag Hospital because he was clear mind, but he just couldn't breathe well, and got a notary in there, put his property into the trust. And I think within 48 hours, he passed away.
Oh my goodness.
Come to find out, that son and the father, they actually have a total of 4 properties now that they need to sell. They didn't go to the other agent. Partially was probably my fault because I said that agent was terrible, but I imagine that this happens a lot. This gentleman was probably extremely transactional and just thought, I'll get to it when they say come for a listing appointment. So he was telemarketing on the family for 8 months. And he said that he called, the family said he called religiously for 8 months, but not once was there that conversation. That's why he talked to a financial planner about his dad's deed. So the great learning lesson of that's like my lesson of the quarter that I'm telling my clients, you guys have access to a lot of information. Don't try to speed through and hit as many doors or have as many conversations. Have meaningful conversations. Be a real estate professional, as Carlos would say. And that's what's going to set you apart. That's what's going to have people remember you and come back to you and refer people to you. I'll get off my soapbox now.
So Mary just said also a hangout in the intensive care unit.
Yes.
That's
Yes, in the intensive care unit. Get to know some good notaries.
probably some attorneys hang out there too, right?
You would be amazed at, yes, the nurses. Yes, yes.
Now, there was a statement up there that said, say again what Rich said. Would you like to address that or would you like me to?
I would like you to. You do it so well.
So we talked about content that maybe is beneficial to a potential seller. So a lot of sellers, I think it's even more applicable to an individual who's owned a property, because if it's a jointly owned property, great, but an individual's owned a property, they only have a $250,000 capital gains exclusion that's available to them if they've held the property for more than 2 years and it's been their primary residence. So let's assume they've owned the property for 2 years, have a $250,000 gain, and they sell it. They will not be taxed on that $250,000. Let's assume 2 more years passes and that property has a $500,000 gain, and that same seller individual sells it, they're going to have a gain of 500,000, but they can deduct from that the $250,000 exclusion, and then they'll be taxed on 250,000. But what if the selling point is sell your property today, take advantage of the $250,000 exclusion so you're not paying any capital gains, roll 100% of that money into your next property. And then if you sell that property, likely you may experience the same amount of gain. And you could sell that again, and once again, have no taxation associated with it. But the whole advantage is, let's compare it. If you sell the one property you've owned and it's a $500,000 gain, you're going to be paying at least 25% tax, meaning you only have $375,000 of that gain to move forward into the replacement property. Whereas if you sell and have no tax liability, you've got actually $500,000 that you can roll forward into properties. So really, I wish I did it. That's what I was thinking. Should have done it sooner.
I know some great real estate agents.
Do you?
Yes.
Yeah, I've had
Would you like an
people-
introduction?
I've had people the people that Mary's talking about that have owned properties for 20 or 30 years, half the reason they're not selling is because they're concerned about paying taxes on the gain.
They're afraid of it,
Yes, they're going to have the exemption, but they could have $1 million or $2 million in gain.
right?
That's
Right.
a heavy tax
And
bill.
there's a lot of those people right now. I mean, it
Yeah.
is insane the number of people that have made, again, going back to like our segments, a lot of these people,
30% taxation on the gain.
right?
Well, it could be as much as 20% federal and
Okay.
probably around 10 to
10,
13% state.
State. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And last tidbit to leave you with, we are not too late to make 2022 your best year ever. So based on the last 3-year averages for Orange County homes, when they come on the market, March comes in as number 3, April comes in at number 2, and May is number 1. May is the number 1 month for the most amount of listings coming onto the market. So our summer market, our hot market, has officially begun. It's March, April, and May. Those are our hottest markets based on the
Summer market?
averages. That's our summer market.
The spring market is.
That,
done.
yes, ma'am, as far as how hot it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that you need to talk to your clients about. There are people that still say like, oh, I'll wait to list until June or July. And actually by June or July is when you start seeing it, the demand go down a little bit. So you really, really want to get on the market by May. March is the best though.
I had a question for both Richard and Mary. I'm hearing from agents on a regular basis that some sellers are hesitating to put their house on the market because they're scared that because of the competitive market, they might not be able to get into a replacement property. How do we respond to that? Or how do the agents respond to that?
I guess what is their motivation for selling to begin with? That's really what it's going to come down to. So now we have tax avoidance, which everybody focuses on. So that's something to discuss with them, how they can roll those gains forward. Because if the property keeps going up, their tax is just going to be greater. Maybe that's an issue. Finding a replacement property, we're seeing it constantly now, where rent backs are included with every single sale. You can make your sale contingent upon finding a replacement property. That doesn't seem to be the vehicle that most people are using in purchase situations. And then keep in mind with rent backs, if there is a loan, the rent back cannot exceed 90 days. Excuse me, 60 days, 60 days. Yeah. Thank you, Shweta.
I've been told by a couple of people that it has to say 59 days, not 60 days.
Oh, well, so I said the rent back
If they-
doesn't exceed. They're
yeah.
just being careful.
Yeah, because they have to be back in the property on day 60.
Yes. So then clients will say, well, we want to rent back for 90 days. What can we do? Why can't you write that up? First of all, don't write that up. Don't document any kind of an agreement like that. The lender's going to see that. And people say, well, how would the lender know? Well, let's assume the seller doesn't move and everything's still being mailed to the same address. That's a distinct giveaway. Not only that, if I'm the lender, I know you're renting back because you told me in the documentation. So that could be a key. And then also it could be loan fraud for the buyer if they don't occupy the property within 60 days. And we don't want to be a party to that. Tell them your advice is they move out, and if they're going to do whatever they're going to do, you have no involvement with that, but you need to put them on notice.
You're not representing them at that point, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
you're
so,
not.
yeah.
You're not representing them, and you don't want to give them advice that it's perfectly acceptable to violate
Right.
the lending agreement that the buyer has.
Mhm. That would be bad. That would
Yes.
be bad. I think one of the things that would be very beneficial in today's market is having long conversations. I know, we already spend a lot of time with our buyers, but your buyer that you've met or the seller who is looking to relocate to a home could say, I'm willing to sell this home if I can find a single level 3-bedroom with 1,800 square feet, and the list goes on and on. So right when they give you what they would want in order to sell this, a lot of times we feel like we hit a brick wall. Like that product doesn't exist in your price point. I think that having long, meaningful conversations, thinking them through it, talking them through it, it is quite often the buyers are not buying what they initially set out to buy. So if the sellers are saying, oh, I will only sell if I get X, Y, and Z, that's a lie. They'll actually sell even if they don't get X, Y, and Z. But we're not able to find that out until we keep offering them and showing them what's available. So Richard kind of covered the logistical side of it. I'm giving you a little more of the conversational and creative aspects of how you need to be looking at this. But that's what I see. I mean, I laugh with some of my clients that put 50, 60 buyers into homes last year in the last 12 months. And they all say more than 60, 70% of the buyers, what they ended up going into was nothing like what they initially came out to look for, because they've had to get a little more fluid with their desire list. They're not going to get what they want. So it could be the price point, it could be the size, and definitely the location. If you've got a buyer that comes in and says, I don't want anything but Mission Viejo, and you're only showing them Mission Viejo, you're setting yourself to fail. Is because they're going all over the place. You have to. I mean, there's not enough homes for you to be pigeonholed into just one little segment. So the wider that you can expand out for them and just keep bringing them different options, I think you're going to have a higher success rate.
Okay, any other questions? Let's see.
And go bankrupt on the price of gas and driving all over the country.
Yeah.
Yes.
John Barris has a new listing coming up, and he actually put it in the chat box for us. Thank you, John. Any questions for Mary before we move on? No, Mary, thank you. Excellent. Very insightful. So today is just a commercial for a forthcoming meeting. We talked about the clear cooperation policy. We talked about register listings, coming soon listings. And I just want, we're seeing more and more errors, and the fines are egregious. So I want to go over the fine policy to give you incentive to attend what should be a very exciting meeting. So different fines: failure to input listing in MLS or register a property. It's 1% not to exceed $2,500. In every single case, I'm not going to say what the lower number will be because the prices here are going to dictate the higher fine. That's a $2,500 fine. Failure to submit a listing to the MLS upon marketing the property, $2,500. Failure to obtain written authorization for changes to a listing agreement, $500. Failure to obtain seller authorization to list in the MLS. Believe it or not, we've had people list properties or put properties in the MLS without a listing contract. That's $1,500. Showing of a coming soon or hold listing is $500. There aren't that many listings out there. Other agents are going to tell on you. Failure to follow advertising requirements for coming soon status listing. So what does that mean? If you advertise your property is coming soon, you must also display the date that the listing is going active. That's only $250.
And you must also have the coming soon form.
Yes, the coming soon form. That's the other thing, right? Next, failure to obtain seller's authorization for coming soon status listings, $750. So we just had a recent example in which somebody was cited because they were marketing a property. They didn't register the property. They were marketing it as coming soon. Now, remember, the clear cooperation policy requires you to actively put out a listing in the MLS within 1 business day of marketing, no matter regardless of what the seller's instructions are. So in this case, my advice to the person was pay that $2,500 fine as quickly as you can, because if you contest it and there's a hearing, the other violations that they haven't cited you for will run your bill up to $6,500 because all the fines stack. So we're going to have a meeting on this to once again go over that. So hopefully everybody has a clear understanding of your obligations and the clear cooperation policy.
Rich, are they nice enough to give you a warning?
No, no warnings. And CRMLS will fight you if you contest the violation. And then if you do fight a violation and the violation is confirmed, it's an additional $100.
So my question is, if you change the status, like if you put the property on hold, you have to get it in writing from the seller?
Before you change the status,
In
correct?
writing.
In writing.
Okay. And then if you change the price of a listing,
That requires the same
You have
written
to
authorization
change.
before you change the price.
is it just a letter from the seller?
It could be
or
an
is it a
email.
Document.
In
Yeah.
written form, right? So you
But
need to
there's
put that
no-
in the file.
There's no particular document.
No, you could use, I'd suggest using the car forms. Yes, that's ideal. However, remember, if you make a change and it's being contested by CRMLS, they're going to give you 24 hours to respond with the documentation. It can be an email, it can be a text. Just making sure the instructions occur before you make the status change or price change in your example.
And they should be uploading that to Sky Slope.
Yes, you need to upload that to SkySlope because they can ask us for that information also.
The email.
Yes, please. Okay. Well, thank you, Mary. Sarah, thank you very much. That was great today. Yes, me too.
I won't get fined.
You don't want to get fined. It's not worth it. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Good seeing you.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you, Mary.